What's up guys, this is Ray and welcome to Asian Filmist. And the movie we'll be talking about today is the 2018 film Kids on the Slope. It's a live action adaptation of the anime of the same name, and the movie is directed by Miki Takahiro, the master of melodramas himself. The movie stars Chinen Yuri, Nakagawa Taishi, and Komatsu Nana. And the story, it's about a boy who moves from Yokosuka all the way to Nagasaki Prefecture in Kyushu, basically from one side of the country to the other. This boy, who's played by Chinen Yuri, the character's name is Kaoru, and he's a classical piano player, and he's kind of an introvert, and he has a bit of trouble making friends. But then he meets and falls in love at first sight with Ritsuko, played by Komatsu Nana. And at his new school, he also meets Sentaro, played by Nakagawa Taishi, this kind of half Japanese and half non-Japanese kid. They're not really clear on what his ethnicity is, but this kid, he's kind of a ruffian. He always gets into fights. Everyone in class just kind of ignores him. And so Kaoru learns that Ritsuko is a huge fan of jazz music, and her father actually runs a jazz record store. And so in an effort to talk to and impress Ritsuko, he starts to learn how to play jazz on his piano. But Ritsuko, she's childhood friends with Sentaro, and so while Kaoru is learning how to play jazz, he also grabs the attention of Sentaro, who's a jazz drummer. And so they form this friendship over jazz music. And so that's the gist of the story. So let's talk about the positives and negatives I felt were in Kids on the Slope. First, the positives, of course. First, I absolutely loved the music. The music was outstanding. It was breathtaking. If you're a fan of jazz music, then this movie has a lot of it. Even the way the opening credits were displayed and animated, it all moved to the sounds of the jazz music playing. And why the jazz music? It's because the story takes place in Sasebo City in Nagasaki Prefecture, where there's actually a big subculture centered around jazz music. And if you guys don't know, Sasebo is the city which I consider my hometown here in Japan. I actually lived there for quite a while before moving towards the Tokyo area. And so seeing the sights, seeing the greenery of Sasebo and hearing the sounds of the local dialect, it definitely sang a lot to me. And that's, for me, that was a big plus. And I felt like this movie really captured the city of Sasebo perfectly, not only with the music and the dialect, but also the monuments of Christianity. Christianity has a huge part in daily life in Nagasaki Prefecture. And when each of the actors, I don't think any of them were native to Nagasaki Prefecture, but all of them, except for Chinen Yuri, just because he's the import from Yokosuka, they all took a stab at speaking the local Sasebo dialect. And as someone who considers the Sasebo dialect to be my root Japanese language, I think they actually did a pretty decent job. But let's talk about the music again, because I think the music was definitely one of the strongest points of the story. And it's centered around jazz music, in which improvisation is a huge part of the music culture, and you can see it displayed within the characters throughout the story. Like there's a scene when Kaoru was practicing a piano piece on his desk, and then behind him, Sentaro kind of senses what he's doing, and so he takes two pencils and starts playing jazz drums on the table behind him as Kaoru's trying to play the piano on his own desk. And in Ritsuko's family's record shop, in the basement, there's a whole jazz setup for people to come in and practice. And then there's this one scene when everyone just kind of comes in, takes up an instrument, and just goes at it without taking any kind of cues, and they just start playing music together. And it's just fun to seeing all that come to life. And I read somewhere that Chinen Yuri and Nakagawa Taishi actually played piano and drums respectively, like for reals, in this movie. I don't know how much they played in preparation for this movie or how much they actually knew how to play before taking up these roles, but you can see them actually doing the motions, and it makes the music feel all the more organic. And not only that, but we also have Dean Fujioka on the jazz trumpet, and I don't know, the more I see of Dean Fujioka in each movie I see him in, the more I really like the guy. Like there's this one scene when Dean Fujioka just stops his brawl, which would have happened between Sentaro and these local Navy sailors, which is an also big part of local Sasebo culture, I might add. And he stops this brawl by basically playing his trumpet and starting up his live concert. And if I'm not mistaken, Dean Fujioka has spent a considerable amount of time in the US, I think for education, and to see him speak English in this movie, in a movie role, it just really cool. Lastly, I really love the chemistry between each of the three main characters, particularly between Chinen Yuri and Nakagawa Taishi's characters. Like Kaoru is the introvert, the guy from the high class background. He's kind of a bochama, which is kind of like the boy of a rich household. And then we have Sentaro, the ruffian with humble beginnings. And at first, you take these two characters and they don't have anything in common other than their love for music. And they're total opposite in so many ways, in other than their backgrounds. Like Kaoru, he's really tiny, and then Sentaro, he's just a giant. And if I had to choose a standout between the two, it would have to be Nakagawa Taishi's Sentaro. I mean, he kind of puts on this big and stupid kind of persona. Even he pulls his face a lot to look like he doesn't really have a clue of what's going on. But I think that makes his performance all the more charming. And overall, I think Sentaro is just a more entertaining character. I mean, going back to the scene that happened in the bar with the sailors, like after their performance was finished, Sentaro was chatting with the sailors and they're yapping in English, and he obviously doesn't speak English, so he's telling them, I don't understand what you guys are saying, but well, let's have a good time. And the center of Sentaro and Kaoru's relationship is jazz music, and seeing them play music together and see them interact with each other as they're playing jazz together is just fantastic. It's just splendid to watch. So every movie has negatives, so let's talk about the negatives of Kids on the Slope. Well, I honestly didn't have too much to say against Kids on the Slope, except that it dives into really familiar territory if you know Miki Takahiro's movies and his ways of showing melodrama on screen. And, this movie has a lot of that. And, I think having a romantic angle in the story is fine, but I think it gets kind of tiresome with this story when it goes into not just a love triangle, but it goes into a love pentagon. And something really out of nowhere happens to one or more of the characters towards the final act of the story, and I felt like, it's fine. I guess I'm watching a Miki Takahiro movie. I should expect these kinds of things to happen. But I thought all of that at first. But as we see the movie come to a close in its final act, and we get reminded of the center of the story isn't actually a love pentagon, but it's actually a friendship on these two guys from opposite backgrounds via jazz music at the center, then I think at that moment this movie totally redeemed itself from that. So all that being said, overall, what did I think of Kids on the Slope? Absolutely loved it. I haven't seen the anime, but it definitely made me interested in checking it out. I'm not sure how much of the original source material was taken out into making this movie a comprehensive 2-hour film, but I think whatever cuts they made, they did a good job with it. And like I said, as someone who spent most of his life in Japan, in Sasebo City, this movie sang a lot to me. The sights, the sounds, the language, it was all legit. Do I recommend this movie? Yeah, I definitely do, especially if you're a fan of jazz music and if you're a fan of bromance stories, because I think rather than being a romantic movie, it has some romantic elements, but at its core, it's a bromance movie. And so yes, those are my thoughts on Kids on the Slope. What did you guys think? Or what kind of questions did you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And please, by all means, support me on Patreon. This really helps me a lot. As a matter of fact, I was able to watch this movie at the movie theaters thanks to my patrons on Patreon. So please support Asian Filmists via Patreon, and you can help me so I can talk about all the latest movies with you guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.